Everyone, to the Thursday, November 16th, 2023 meeting of the Bellingham Planning Board. The agenda item tonight is WS Development. Amy, can you bring us up to speed on what is happening this evening?
Yeah,
And by the way, this is a continuing public.
yes, when we were last here, the board had wanted to ask the applicant to procure an independent peer reviewer. And they have done that, and they're here to report back the findings from the peer reviewer, and also Ron's gonna give his synopsis of where we're at.
And do we have, is someone here from our peer reviewer?
Yes, Robert Michaud with MDM Transportation.
All
Present.
right, thank you for showing up.
Thanks,
Yeah.
certainly.
What's yours?
Turn it over to Austin. All right, set the stage. Good evening. For the record, Austin Turner with Bowler, and here with two gentlemen who probably don't need an introduction at this point, but Mr. Curley and Mr. Mueller, who is our resident traffic expert, among other things. So what we thought we'd do tonight, it's been a little bit since last appearing in front of this board.
Yep.
Thought what we'd do first, just let you know what some of our conversations have been with the Conservation Commission. We've had multiple meetings with them since our last appearance with you, which have been frankly very, very productive. And I think they would echo my sentiment that we've made a lot of progress, and we're down to some very focused items and refining, really. So we feel really, really good about where we are there. Want to go through the progress that we've made in collaboration with your peer reviewer on the driveway. We have some very good plans to show you about how that's evolved with Mr. Michaud's feedback as well. So I think we've kind of reached, at least as far as we view it, a very good consensus on what makes sense there, and Ron will talk about that. We've created some perspective views for you, showing what you would presumably see or not see, for that matter, as you're traveling 495, and then from the ramp systems. We have some of those views here that we'll share.
Okay.
And then we'll have a discussion about all those things, and I suspect we'll be talking about them individually as well.
All right.
So with that, with our appearance in front of the Conservation Commission, we've been talking a lot about refining how the mitigation package is going to come together, and what that looks like in terms of wetlands that we're going to be creating to compensate for some of the alterations that we have as part of the project. We've had some very, very productive working sessions with the town's consultant BSC, who's been very collaborative and engaging in that regard. And those working sessions we've been able to participate in have really helped us move this thing forward. So that's been quite welcome. We are at the point now where we are into some refined engineering, if you will, and of the mitigation areas. We have an upcoming working session in the next week and a half or so. Yeah, week after Thanksgiving, to go through some of that additional technical detail. And substantively speaking, we feel like we're getting very, very close to the finish line there. So that's been a very, very welcome process.
And I think as that affects this process, not that they're all isn't intertwined, but there are a handful of, less than a handful, maybe three of the remaining BSC comments, Dominic's comments that were part of the planning board review, that we've been waiting to put this definition as part of the Concom process together, so we can finish up those engineering matters that Austin alluded to, and get final sign off from BSC on the review that they've done. So
Yeah, as you can imagine, some of that, the completion of the mitigation has influence over some other things. So we're just making sure that got to a point where we had reached consensus, and then we could finish everything up. So we're actively working with that right now, and feel good about it.
Okay. I think we want to keep this momentum going as well.
Yeah. Me too. Very much so. Yes. So with that, I think the next part of this, what I'll do, I'll bring up the new plan, which talks about, or shows the driveway.
the plan and the perspective views that Austin alluded to, those were provided to Amy. I presume
we have
one is, okay.
Yeah, I think this was provided maybe November 7th, so a little over a week ago. So just by way of quick introduction, then I'm gonna let Ron talk about it. So this plan, as you can recall, we've had multiple meetings about the driveway, gotten a lot of good feedback from this board. And more recently, you had suggested wanting to get Bob and his team engaged to make sure that he was providing some feedback or reach consensus. Ron and the team with Bob have done a lot of kind of tuning, if you will. I think the plan that we're showing you on the screen here is reflective of a lot of feedback. And generally, there's an alignment that this makes sense and represents a pretty solid evolution of things. So, Ron, do you want me to drive you and talk about the plan, or I can probably send this?
Probably.
You can do that on your way.
Switch out.
Switch. This way, see.
Look at how nimble we can be.
All right. So good evening. As Austin said, we've been working very closely with MDM to produce this plan. We did get their comments, and without putting words in Bob's mouth, but I think the objectives, the MDM's reviewed objectives primarily were to sort of simplify the wayfinding signage, improve on the lane assignment, lane arrangement, and then most of all to make sure that shopping center patrons don't get trapped if they go past that first internal intersection.
Okay,
So what we've done is we've taken their recommendations and produced this plan. We've reviewed this plan also with Bob Michaud and Dan Dumas from MDM. But essentially what this does is this part of it hasn't changed.
Am I hearing feedback somewhere?
Yeah, I don't know how, I don't know.
Okay, excuse me.
No problem. So it's this general area here hasn't changed. So we still have 2 entering and 3 exiting lanes. But before, we had the right turn lane become a right only lane into the shopping center. Where now what we're proposing is to have basically 2 general purpose lanes. So shopping center traffic can still be in both lanes past this first internal intersection. And it's not until they get to around the bend where now we introduce with the signage right here that says warehouse traffic go straight and shopping center traffic turn right. So that's shopping center patrons' last opportunity to enter into the shopping center at that curb cut there. An additional sign at that location right there saying the same thing, warehouse traffic straight through only and shopping center right turn only. So what that does, most, as you probably know, familiar with this location, most shopping center traffic enters at the right turn lane at this location. But there are some peak hour, roughly in the 40 to 60 vehicle range that do continue straight through, presumably go to the contract area at Home Depot. So that traffic will still be able to continue through here, and then they'll have to turn right into the shopping center at that location. It also does have one added benefit, and I think Mr. Salisbury, you mentioned the concern about a lot of weaving of traffic going on in this section of road as you enter the shopping center, and then you have to make a decision at that point already which lane you want to be in. This allows us the ability to carry that decision point basically much further into the site until you get to this point down here. The other thing that MDM wanted to improve upon is access into UNOS. The prior plans didn't really address how people get into UNOS. It sort of assumed that, well, if you're an UNOS customer, you know how to get into UNOS. What this plan now does is it introduces an exclusive left turn lane for UNOS traffic to enter at this location. They still have the ability to make a left turn at this location. But creation of this separate left turn lane, we hope will entice more UNOS traffic to make that turn at this location. It's about the only difference between this plan and MDM's recommendation. MDM suggested that we make the westerly UNOS driveway an exit only and basically force all UNOS entering traffic to the easterly driveway. What we've said is this approach is free flowing. There's no stop control. There's nothing that stops this traffic from continuing either straight, left, or right. It's all the other 3 approaches that are on a stop control. So allowing UNOS traffic to make a left turn at this location isn't a capacity issue, isn't a delay issue, shouldn't be a safety issue because, like I said, they have the right of way to make that turn. I'll get to it a little bit later on how I think we can address MDM's concern about that. But let me also address the wayfinding signage. So you see a lot fewer signs on this plan now, and I think, and as recommended by MDM, that's a good thing. For one thing, the overhead sign that we are proposing, and I apologize that we can't see the sign because there's a lot going on one sheet of paper here. But essentially what we're now proposing is on that mast arm, on the outermost left turn lane, we have basically a sign that reads what this sign says here, which is warehouse traffic, use left lane. There won't be any sign over the adjacent left turn lane. Before we had a sign that says shopping center only. And we've eliminated that sign at MDM's recommendation because literally shopping center traffic can be in both lanes now because of this new lane arrangement. There's an additional sign as you make the turn, that's located right here, that also says the same thing, warehouse traffic, use left lane. Again, we're trying to keep warehouse traffic in the proper lane as early on as possible, where Uno's traffic and shopping center traffic, or shopping center traffic certainly can be in both lanes. We've retained through prior meetings the do not block intersection box, although as I think I've said in past meetings, all of our queuing analysis show that at most the queues go back to roughly about this location here, at the maximum queues. But we've added that sign, the box, and a sign that says do not block intersection, just to ensure if traffic should back up further, some special event, but God knows what's going on, that they don't. We've also retained the crosswalk here with the rectangular rapid flashing beacon system. So it's push button activated. The lights will flash when pedestrians want to cross between the shopping center and Uno's. The one thing that in talking with MDM about, like I said, their recommendation was to make the Uno's driveway here and exit only. We're recommending to maintain that as two-way traffic. And I think the way we can address this is through a monitoring program, whereby, and what I've recommended, and we can certainly talk about the terms of the monitoring program, but I've suggested at roughly 50% occupancy and 100% occupancy. And the reason for that is because the warehouse building may be occupied by more than one user, and we don't want to wait until 100% occupancy if this does show up to be a problem. So I'm suggesting around 50% occupancy, and then at 100% occupancy, we go out, we do traffic counts, we monitor the field, observe how traffic flows through this intersection. We collect accident data from the local police department, and we run some capacity analysis to see how this operates in comparison to what we see in the field. If things work as we hope they do, then no further action is needed. If it does reveal that there may be some issues out there, then we can always implement the last of MDM's recommendations, which is to eliminate the left turn into this driveway at this location. We can still keep it two-way driveway, but basically we're now directing all Uno's traffic to continue straight and use the left turn lane to access Uno's. That is basically all I have to say. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. Or I don't know if you want to have your peer review consultant.
I would like to have our consultant. Robert, can you please chime in?
Sure. Thank you, board members. For the record, Robert Michaud, principal with MDM Transportation Consultants. I think Ron's done a very good job at explaining some of the key elements of what's evolved over the last month or so. He correctly points out that many of the objectives that we laid out in our initial review of this, which dates back to mid-October, have in fact been addressed. The board might recall seeing a conceptual plan that we had put together that had some of the same elements. I think through additional discussions with Ron and his team, that this iteration actually is a bit easier to implement in certain ways. It has less, perhaps, environmental impact. we didn't, of course, have the benefit of knowing what constraints exist on the site or not in terms of wetlands and infrastructure, utilities, et cetera. So Ernest came up with this plan. We've reviewed it. We're comfortable with it, and that it actually provides the level of flexibility that we had suggested would be needed to accommodate UNO's needs and their patron needs, to not unduly constrain how shopping center patrons use the driveway. Although I think the patrons they frequent this shopping center and are familiar with it. This type of a design is really intended to accommodate the needs of someone who is not familiar with the shopping center necessarily. And for those who aren't, in the prior iteration, there was this potential of call it trap lane, right? Or a situation where you might not be in the lane that you need to be in to properly access the main parking field, et cetera. So we're comfortable with what's shown here. Ron had pointed out the phased approach, if you will, to ensuring that the UNO's intersection, which is really where the highest level of vehicular conflict exists in this design, there's a provision that allows for the monitoring and remedial actions if they're warranted, if they're justified, to fully implement what we had suggested as a concept and idea, and that is restricting the westerly driveway to exit only. Because of the traffic controls that are shown here, the stop control on the westbound approach of the primary perimeter roadway, the stop control on the main parking field access to that intersection, those controls will certainly allow folks to come to a complete stop and be able to really judge whether or not they should be proceeding, given turns that might be occurring in UNO. So I think this is appropriate. I think monitoring is a must, but I don't expect subsequent monitoring results to necessarily show a problem. But I think it's a good idea to include it. We issued a letter today that essentially recapped each of the points and the objectives that we initially laid out. And just to summarize, the elimination of the trap lane scenario, where two through lanes are now provided, the reduced conflict at the UNO primary plaza driveway by allowing an alternative access to the easterly driveway with a dedicated left turn lane. That's great. And simplifying the wayfinding and lane assignment signs, which Ron had already reviewed. The only additional commentary we have at this point would really have to do with the monitoring. We agree with the framework of the monitoring. We would recommend that the post-occupancy count data include video of the intersection for a week-long period, not necessarily traffic counts every day of the week, but just the video portion so that there's a visual record of how things are actually working. We wouldn't want to limit the observations to a day or two. We'd want to really understand the ebb and flow of what things look like on a day-to-day basis for a typical week of operation. So that would really be the only additional comment we had on the monitoring. And in conclusion, we think it's been a very good process with WS and their consultant in identifying these improvements. We think that it serves of the warehouse as well as the patrons of the shopping center. And I'm glad to answer any questions the board might have.
Before I turn over the board, I think it was rather unique that we asked for a third party review of this proposal. I want to thank both parties getting together and working on this. It's alleviated some of the concerns I have, but I'll wait to ask my questions last. I'll start with Dennis.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Kind of downtown some of the signage because it was getting a little busy and people are doing too much reading and not watching the road, you know what I'm saying? This simplifies it. And the only thing I would agree with Billy when he put in that do not block area in the UNO thing. Many times I've visited the site with Amy. The queues down to where you say, but if that next vehicle is a couple tractor trailers, They block that.
Right.
They have no, they can't not block it. So that's why we wanted to put that in there, eliminate it, and then you can't go across the street. You're kind of stuck there. So that works for me.
So, with regard to the emergency last chance lane that you've added. If a truck were to go there, what are their options in terms of? If they come down through that last chance. They're entering into the parking lot, they could go straight. Or they could take a right, I suppose, or they could take a left. I'm more concerned about large trucks.
That means down here.
Yep, and then when they come down through that.
So we do have the signs, there and there, which is this sign right there.
Yeah.
Whereas traffic basically, use the left lane and shopping center traffic use the right lane. So we hope, certainly that before they get to those signs, that warehouse traffic knows which lane to be in. I mean, it is a warehouse. They are presumably, using the same truck drivers, over and over again, that they would know by, very early on which lane to be in. But even if you do have the occasional driver who's not familiar with the area, we have the wayfinding signage way in advance of the intersection, that says trucks use left lane, or warehouse traffic use left lane. Again, down here, warehouse traffic use left lane. And then as you come around the bend. The one thing I thought about, but didn't show on this plan, typically when you have a situation where a right turn lane, or a lane becomes a right turn only lane, we sort of have, instead of having this island come all the way out here, typically, I mean, and if this were a major highway like Route 126, you wouldn't do that. You would actually have the curb line extend down along this way and then slowly merge back in, so that if you do have an errant driver who finds himself in a right only lane, they have a way to merge back in without hitting a curb right away. We could do that here, certainly. I chose not to in this case, for two reasons. One, we wanted to maintain or maximize the landscape areas, which we would obviously lose some here if we did that. And the other reason is people know, people who visit Crossroads Center know where they want to go. And same with warehouse traffic, they're gonna know which lane they want to be in. So it's really a choice, and that may be a decision by the board. Would you want to maximize the landscape area, or would you want to allow for sort of a refuge?
I'll get to that in my question.
Okay.
So but once they get into that, is there a mechanism to direct trucks a certain way if they do happen to enter or exit that way? Or is there? What's the likely travel path?
If they are headed to the warehouse, but have found themselves in that situation, is that the question you're asking?
Or not the warehouse, or just
I
a
think you're
truck?
coming straight across that row of parking lot and making the right at the island you modified, right? And going back out to the driveway and taking the right and getting in the correct lane the next, they do a loop around and get in the correct lane.
I'm not sure I'm following it.
Yeah.
You go clockwise around the parking lot.
Yeah.
You kind of, if you came in like this, you loop through here, up around.
And
And make that turn.
Yeah.
Did you follow the
Sure,
cursor there?
sure.
Yeah, yeah, and get back and do that same trip, but get in the left lane this time, knowing that you now know that you should be in the right lane.
Is there a way to ensure that path through the geometry of the curb, I don't know what they call it, curb cuts? So the trucks don't necessarily take a right and go through the parking lot, or they just go straight over?
It's a bit hard to see on here, but right here. This end cap island, kind of the bottom center of the screen. Is very, the radius points on that are very, very tight and very kind of compact. It'd be virtually impossible for them to take that, and that's partially why when you see kind of the large radius point on this end cap island. Intuitively, it facilitates that maneuver and almost encourages that clockwise turning movement.
Right, I was actually thinking at the actual entrance point.
With it, this point here,
Yeah. Is that,
to encourage or discourage?
to encourage them to go straight versus taking a left or a right.
Sure.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, there are striped parking spaces there on both sides and a driveway that runs between them there.
I mean, certainly a large, like a WB-67 tractor trailer couldn't make that turn.
They could make that. Okay,
It's really, the radius
Like
points
a
there.
single unit truck can make the turn, but that's about it.
But the big ones can't go right or they can't go left. They would just sort of naturally go straight.
It's even questionable whether a big tractor trailer could make that right turn right here.
Yeah, that's.
That's very tight, and we wanted to keep it tight on purpose because we don't want people to construe this as a two-way.
a two-way, and we want to discourage the warehouse traffic from
Right.
making that choice. All right, thank you.
My turn.
It is.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you very much for working with Bob Michaud and making these adjustments. And thank you, Bob, for working with Ron to come up with a solution to our comments. I echo, the same thing that everybody's saying. I think that the layout looks pretty good. I'm not a traffic engineer, would never claim to be one, so a lot of the stuff's over my head, but I do like that, if a tractor trailer does manage to get in that right turn lane, it does keep them away from Home Depot and really where most of the passenger vehicles are gonna be. And from my standpoint, I like the idea of maximizing the landscaping, keeping it tight. That's my standpoint. One question for either you, Ron, or MDM, regarding the monitoring. I know the idea is to commence monitoring around 50% occupancy. I know Bob mentioned that basically some video recording should probably be done for a week. How long should the rest of the monitoring go, do you think? Like as far as traffic counts or?
So if we're gonna have video out there for a week, through video, you can also collect turning movement count data. So we will have a week's worth of turning movement counts.
Okay.
And what we can do, obviously, you watch, hopefully fast forward, 7 days worth of observations, but, and then we'll pick the peak hour, or the peak hours, AM, PM, Saturday. Actually, AM is sort of pointless because who knows, it's not even open. But certainly PM and Saturday will pick the worst time period and we'll analyze that.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I really like the idea of monitoring after this is constructed, so. Perfect.
So I guess I'm a little different spot. For the first couple months and times we've seen you guys come in, we had one road that we were trying to make exclusive for the warehouse. Returning location where the do not enter sign was, we closed that off because we didn't want people coming through there. We wanted to segregate the traffic. You said use the word free flow. This is more free flowing. I take that as a negative, because not being a traffic engineer, but I come in, I've got trucks coming and going possibility with Floor and Decor up at the top area there. You've got both directions coming in and out of that top intersection there. The history of this location has been that parking lot's been free flowing. And I use free flowing as pallets and everything else out there. Seasonal sale area all over that parking lot. And that's the history of that location. And so now we're putting in a turning area that you come down, you turn around by the do not enter sign, and you're coming back with possible cars, but also tractor trailers that get lost. and cutting across the parking lot, and when you come out that area by the do not enter, you're heading towards Floor and Decor again. And now you've got the Floor and Decor in front of you. And I know when I use that, coming across that area, the first thing I want to do is head south, and I'm gonna come across, turn south at Floor Decor and come out North Main Street. So now I'm questioning whether that's gonna send traffic that direction from people getting lost. And it looks like you can't get, coming up from the new warehouse, and if it, I'm using the word warehouse, but we don't necessarily know what it's gonna be. If it's a warehouse and major tractor trailers coming out of there and cars and, the whole thing that I think we were talking about earlier was segregating the traffic, the tractor trailers and the cars. And now we're more free flowing.
Well, I use the term free flowing, more in the sense of giving, both warehouse and shopping center traffic more flexibility in where they
I know.
make the turns. I was never a big fan of closing off that curb cut. And I'm glad that MDM came to the same realization that keeping that curb cut is actually a good thing. Changing it to a one-way right turn and only as opposed to a full access curb cut. So that it does literally from this point on, this becomes almost the separate, the segregation between warehouse traffic and shopping center traffic.
On the way out though. I mean, it's.
No, on the way in too. Because, like I said,
After you get past that turn point.
very few customers actually, use, actually, I don't know how many customers actually use this existing curb cut there to turn, and a lot of people use it to turn out currently. Most cars that want to access the shopping center do so here. There are a few who continue straight through, and I know because I do it, I go all the way down to the Home Depot contract area if I want to go to Home Depot. And that's presumably, obviously, contractors, but also people like me who continue straight through because it's easier to get to Home Depot that way than to cut right through the main parking field. And so having this right turn access allows people like me and contractors still to use this, so that you're bypassing where the majority of the shopping center traffic activity happens. But it also gives those people who are new to the area, new to Crossroads, and miss that first turn, at least it gives them the ability to still make that turn at this point.
So they make that turn at that point, they come back up, they decide to go back up towards Hartford Avenue. And where do they end up? They end up facing Uno's. And now you've got cars going that way, you've got cars that could possibly be making that turn right in that intersection into Uno's. And to me, it's just.
But how's that different from today?
Today, you don't have a warehouse with tractor trailers and cars intermingled. Okay, that's the thing for me.
But I mean,
Like, we're adding traffic, but it's got to improve the situation. Is it improving the situation from where it is today?
Yes.
Is my question.
yes, 100%.
100%.
Yes. Yes, there are additional lanes of traffic that you don't have there today, much wider sweeps. This is a pretty significant widening of this entrance with this proposal. You can see there's existing curb right there on this side, and it's right there on that side, so it's a pretty significant widening in through that. Plus, from this point on, this ring road or perimeter road is only 2 lanes of traffic, one entering, one exiting. Now we have 4.
Why wouldn't it be just 2? Because then you don't have tractor trailers or cars
Well,
trying
that was my
to go
original
back and forth.
proposal.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
That was the original proposal that we had.
and we're trying to make it better to get into Uno's right now.
We're trying to do a number of things to improve the access into Uno's, make sure that shopping center traffic doesn't get trapped once they get past this first internal intersection. Give them an extra opportunity to make that turn. We're trying to maximize the green space, and separate to provide as much separation between the warehouse access road and the parking lot. So there's a number of things that aren't always working together, but we're trying to make the best.
Well, that's what I'm hearing. We're trying to make the best.
Well,
That's,
but it's a good, and I can tell you that, we've run a number of different models on this, for this internal intersection, and we've shared that information with MDM. And I believe, I don't want to speak for Bob, but he can certainly chime in, that operationally, this intersection works very well with this design. So I know you said you're not a traffic expert.
I'm not a traffic expert. I did pull through that intersection less than 10 days ago, so I've been through there. I'm used to this parking lot. I know the environment that's there. The monitoring, can you go into a little bit more of the monitoring? Because to me, when I hear monitoring, why are we doing monitoring when we I'm going to use a common sense, non-engineer. If we need to figure out the monitoring later to confirm some things, that's one, I mean, why are we monitoring?
I get to check the move. I mentioned that earlier. If you remember 2 meetings, maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago, I indicated before we brought in MDM, that I wanted a mechanism and one of the conditions that we would set money aside to make sure we review the traffic flow, to make sure everything worked, if you recall that. The feedback I received was, it's a nice idea, but how much are we gonna put there? I said, I don't know. It will be a clause based on an approval, a condition, that we monitor this. I was thinking more the overall flow, but you've addressed it at 50% and 100% occupancy. I'm thinking maybe 1 year and 2 years out, and that could be the same time frame. Or we look at the whole overall project to see if we're meeting our targets. And if we're not, if we have to make changes, how do we make these changes? So I brought that up.
You brought that up. Okay, can I ask Robert, our traffic consultant, you use the word, the monitoring is a must. Can you elaborate on why you chose those words? Why is it a
Sure.
must?
Yeah, monitoring for projects like this is done quite often, and in fact, in most cases, we do a lot of work with logistics facilities and industrial sites, and the nature of the industry has changed quite a bit, and it still continues to evolve. Right? I don't know for certain who the end tenant is going to be for this facility. The market will dictate that eventually. And as best an engineer can estimate the impact a project might have, it's really incumbent on the proponent to look back to determine whether or not the projections that served as the basis of the approval are in line with reality, right? So there's really two reasons to do monitoring. One is to validate the volume-based projections that served as the basis for the design. The second is to determine whether or not the design and the function of the design meets the objectives that were established, that we just covered, right? So I use the word must. I think it's very important to monitor in the context that this industrial site is co-joined, if you will, is sharing access with a high volume shopping center environment, right? So you've got a mix of heavy commercial vehicles and passenger vehicles. We think you can manage that properly, and I think this design actually does that. But validating it is very important. To the extent, and Ron pointed it out, to the extent folks are not familiar with the shopping center and they are headed to Uno's as one example, we'd want to understand whether or not someone using that initial driveway, the westerly driveway, the driveway that has the do not block the box in front of it, whether vehicles, as they're slowing to make that turn, are influencing or being influenced by the trucks that might be behind them, right? Or whether the queuing conditions that extend from signal regularly impact that do not block the box marking area, and whether or not the marking area is effective, whether people actually obey the markings is the best way to put it. Those types of things through a monitoring program will validate whether or not they actually worked. And if they don't, and Ron alluded to this, that you would then consider a remedial action of, in that instance, converting that westerly driveway for Uno's as an exit only and putting up other signs that would reinforce and direct people to use the easterly driveway where the exclusive left turn lane is. So monitoring, I use the word must. I think it's a very important component here, and I think it's justified, and I think it's something that's done regularly for projects like this to meet those two objectives. One, to validate the volume projections and the operations, and secondly, to make sure that the traffic controls that are put in place are effective, and if they're not, to do something about it.
Hey, Robert, let me ask you a safety question. I'm not asking a financial question. I'm asking a safety question. So from a safety point of view, would it be better off to shut off that first driveway to Uno's completely as you're entering the site from a safety point of view?
Not necessarily.
Why?
I think there are needs that relate to the operation of any site, right? One of them is delivery operations, another is accommodating patron demand.
Okay, so the existing Uno's is there, is what you're saying, and your decision is because what you're telling me is that you're accommodating the existing business that's there in the design. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. That business is there. It's operating. People are familiar with that operation.
If you didn't have a business operating there and you were designing a new business, that wouldn't be there, would it?
Not necessarily.
Please.
Yeah, I don't think, not necessarily. I think that when you look at the needs of any site, having a sole means of access and egress can present other issues and concerns. Look at, if that was a blank slate, and I had my way, I'd take the Uno's restaurant and slide it to the page left and have the driveway on the right side of the building, right? Further from the signal and the potential for queue influence. That's what I would do. But we don't have a blank slate here. We have a built structure that's been active for some time, that has parking on both sides of the building with certain needs for access and circulation. So the question really is it appropriate to restrict how a driveway is used, not necessarily eliminate it, which led us to suggest that perhaps that westerly driveway, the one that's closest to the signal, be converted to an exit-only driveway to reduce the amount of vehicle conflict that might be associated with it. In other words, to eliminate the left turn movement as you're approaching the signal toward the primary aisle for the shopping center. The response, I think, is a good one in that patrons who do frequent that location may find it easier and more convenient to go to the easterly driveway where they have a dedicated lane, left turn lane, to be able to pull into, wait for a gap in traffic, and then proceed into the parking lot. Likewise for loading operations, which Ron didn't specifically mention, but we did in our initial review, that the Uno's has a need for delivery of product or refuse removal, for instance. And that easterly driveway and the design that's now presented actually facilitates that and gets that traffic off of the perimeter road into its own lane and onto that site. Once onto the site, the most logical pattern that we suggested would be to use the westerly driveway as an exit only to facilitate the movement back to the signal. Now, this design proposes to retain the two-way operation of that westerly driveway. I don't have any particular problem with that, in that it will be monitored, and to the extent operationally or safety wise there's a need to convert it or restrict it, it can be done at that time. It's not, the proponent is not saying they can't or won't restrict its use. I think what the proponent is saying here is that let's see how this actually functions and then react to that, which I think is a common approach for projects like this. And I think it's a reasonable approach.
But it's kicking the can it's kicking the can down the road and seeing if it works. And I don't like that,
Well,
to be honest with you.
If I may, if I can address that topic. The way we're looking at it is there is not a safety issue with that westerly Unos driveway today. We don't expect that there will be a safety issue, even with the increase in traffic from the warehouse use. But we're doing the monitoring to make sure of that, because we do have a solution if the monitoring does show there to be a safety or operational problem.
Robert, I'm gonna ask a question, and I apologize if I'm asking, I'm not trying to be abrupt on it, and I'm gonna phrase it, I'm trying to ascertain the situation. Can I ask, have you been on this site before, Robert, and seen that intersection and agree with it?
Well, the intersection, I have been on the site. My employees and staff have been on site. I have staff members who live in this area that go to the site regularly. The intersection at Uno's, and we haven't been there every day of the week for many days of the month or year. I can say that, and I'm not suggesting that there may not be operational from time to time operational issues associated with it. But when we've observed it, and based on my discussions with staff who've been here on a regular basis to go to Home Depot, for instance, they acknowledge that the intersection is a busy intersection, but that it doesn't necessarily present a problem, and that if you want to go to the Uno's, you can get in relatively easily. And my experience and the experience of my staff has been that there are a number of customers of Uno's who actually prefer to park in the main parking field, in an area on the south side of the perimeter road and walk across to go to the restaurant. They find it more convenient to do that. And we think that that will continue to be the case. And as a result, as we've been discussing these improvements with Ron and his team, we stress the need to reinforce that crossing. And in fact, they are proposing rapid rectangular flashing beacons as one form of control to ensure the safety of that crossing, the visibility of that crossing. So the intersection today is not problematic. But again, if we were looking at this as a blank slate, I would personally probably have designed the building in a different location. But that's not what we have. We have a building where it is today, driveways where they are today. The question is whether or not this plan represents a reasonable accommodation for that use at that location. I believe it does. And I believe that the monitoring program is going to allow a discretion by the town to restrict how that driveway functions if there is in fact an issue in the future.
Okay, I'm concerned about Saturdays. I'm concerned about the traffic. I'm concerned about the fact that we don't know what type of business is going there. I'm concerned tractor trailers and the cars are going to be mixed. And, you've got several entrances and traffic spots on this where they could be turning in different directions. The Floor and Decor turn to go back out 495. I'm concerned about that gray area up there at the beginning still on both sides. I'm concerned we're bringing it back through the parking lot where we've had issues and I say issues, I'm saying that as a resident of Bellingham, seeing the parking lot and the way it's used in seasonal time periods with the business that's there, it's fairly well used. And now we're putting additional stuff through there, and with the warehouse. So I guess I was disappointed to see that that one access road was, that turns there too, so I'll say that and we'll just keep moving.
Yeah, and I just want to stress that the original concept for this really, it created that single lane that you mentioned just to the east or page right of the primary driveway. And I think the intent of that was to try to restrict the use of that easterly portion of the perimeter road to the industrial warehouse site itself, period. And there may be in a view, and we suggested this, unintended consequences of that kind of a design. And that if someone's not familiar with the plaza, the shopping center, they could essentially find themselves in the outer, or the lane that's closer to Uno's, and realize that they really don't want to be in that lane, that they need to get into that main parking field. And that created what we call a trap lane, essentially. And that would be an unintended consequence of that former design, that is a safety concern, and that the only real way to address that would have been by going all the way to the end of the perimeter road and finding a way to reverse direction. So this design, and I mentioned this, offers flexibility in that, and what I mean by flexibility is contingency, if you will. If you're not in the lane you thought you should be, it gives you the ability to correct that and to get back to the main field in a reasonable way without having to go all the way down the perimeter road to the warehouse again. As a practical matter, people who go to this shopping center are familiar with it. They know how to use it. You're an example of that, in that you're going to know which lane to be in, where the parking lots to fit, etc. So by and large, the vast majority of trips that are made here are going to understand that, and based on what we've seen for volume information and what Ron has mentioned, there are a handful, not the majority certainly, of folks who do not use the perimeter road beyond that first primary entrance. There are probably between 50 and 60 vehicles an hour that actually proceed toward the Home Depot connection, because using the perimeter road to get to that portion of the shopping center is simply easier. This design still accommodates that 50 to 60 vehicle volume that may find it still, under this design, easier to go to this right turn only lane to proceed to Home Depot, and to do so in a way that's outside of where the truck traffic is actually happening. So I think this design, achieves all of the objectives that we had laid out. It's certainly a vast improvement, both operationally and from a safety perspective, relative to where it was a month or two ago. We've taken a very collaborative approach with Ron and his team to really put our heads together to make sure that this is as good as it can be, and I think this does that.
Robert, can you hear me now?
I can. I'm sorry. It sounds like I might have lost you for a minute.
Okay. I'll restate. So we're here to evaluate a new building. Putting in a new warehouse or new facility that's there. The idea is we want to make this better. And I think the evaluation you were using was, and I'm not saying which one's right, but you're saying that this is an improvement on what was being looked at 2 or 3 weeks ago. Does the safety of this area, is it improved or degraded by putting the warehouse in with this setup here. And I'm talking from a safety point of view.
Yeah, so, as a traffic engineer, I can speak to what our perspective is in terms of accommodating the needs of both the patrons of the shopping center and the industrial operation of the warehouse, right? And I think, clearly we want to reinforce to the extent we can the separation of traffic between the warehouse and the shopping center. It's not possible to entirely separate that volume, the shopping center traffic from the industrial traffic, but what you can do is to reinforce and provide sufficient lanes and wayfinding to have trucks and the heavier portion of commercial activity use portions of the perimeter road in a way that is, if it has sufficient sweep area for the size of the vehicle, that you're introducing exclusive turn lanes for passenger vehicles so that they can safely wait for gaps in traffic, that the visibility from a vehicle to vehicle perspective is appropriate. In other words, the sight line, so that it's someone might be leaving the shopping center, they have the ability to see an oncoming vehicle, a truck, to be able to determine whether or not a gap is appropriate to take. And to look at controls as they're shown on this plan, like the do not block the box marking, that would reinforce that in cases where you have vehicle queues, they're not necessarily going to block driveways, right? So I don't know if this is precisely answering your question, but I think that these two projects can coexist, that they can use a common access point, given the lane configurations that are shown here, the traffic controls that are shown here, the geometry that is proposed, the wayfinding signs, and the fact that this will be monitored as well. So I think, this plan represents a reasonable accommodation for both of the uses. It's certainly designed to a good engineering standard, using, compliant signs and methods. So we feel that this plan is appropriate and can accommodate the needs of both.
Like to add to that, if I may. Let's not forget that there's also a $10 million improvement project being planned now for Route 126 interchange with 140, 195. That would not be possible without the help of this project. So there are certainly a lot of operational and safety benefits being created by this project.
Well, I acknowledge the engineering and I'm not fully aware of the entire benefit package that's being there, but I think that at some point the town would like to hear more about it. Because traffic is my biggest concern about this. I think I've said it in the past. I think other board members have said it in the past. The Hartford Avenue situation, the first day you came on board, you acknowledged that it was a concern. I asked, my question was, does this make it worse or better? Is certainly something that I'm weighing. So
I can tell you that the 126, the Hartford Ave corridor is certainly going to work a heck of a lot better with this project.
That's exactly what we need to go through.
Right.
So.
Well, that's been established. I mean, DOT has acknowledged that. That's why we're proceeding with this project. The 75% plans are being prepared right now, will be submitted within about a month to DOT. So that project is moving forward, and is moving forward with the financial help of WS Development.
Yeah, and we've already had the conversation at least twice that until that is done, then we were willing to hold up the start of this project until that is done. So I'm certainly weighing that in to the situation. And
No, I mean, from the proponent's perspective, we need to evaluate this project on its own merits. But Ron's right. I mean, what brought this project forward initially or conversations between WS. We own and operate all three shopping centers at this interchange, have been in town for, more than 30 years at this point. And are very familiar with the way the 126 corridor operates, and all of the background growth has contributed to the degradation. I've stayed in touch with the town manager and planner over the years, and have looked at many different opportunities to try to improve the 126 corridor. The reality is, no one project can be built and afford to make all of these improvements that are necessary in the 126 corridor. Not because of the impacts from this project. This project, the 126 corridor improvements would look almost exactly the same with and without this project. They're not happening to mitigate for this project. This project is economic development that's affording the town the opportunity to go seek funding for the 126 corridor improvements. A MassWorks grant was provided. The DOT has committed some money, subject to our receipt of our approvals here. We've committed some money towards that, and the town is actively pursuing additional funding for the 126 improvement. So while the improvements are not driven by this project in and of themselves, this project, to Ron's point, is a key to unlocking the funding for making those improvements. But again, it's a tricky spot for me to be in. Again, it is a project that the town is undertaking, and we've been.
No, I know, we've been
help them
been a
with.
partner. I
Yeah,
just want to make
to
sure
get
that.
along, yeah. I appreciate that, but
And, you know, I'm not always in the middle of your
No, I-
discussions with the state and all
Understand.
that, so. At some point, we might want to talk more about that. This is probably not the right spot for it, but. I am concerned about the safety here and improving
as are we.
that corridor as
Yeah.
well,
So
so.
we want to make sure this, we have the most amount of interest in making sure this
You've got
functions
huge
properly.
amount of interest, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm done.
Sure, I just had a couple of concerns with the crosswalk going to Uno's. Is there a reason why that Xbox wouldn't be pulled down? Cover the entire intersection? If that crosswalk beacon goes off, are there gonna be tractor trailers or vehicles pulling right up to that crosswalk and kind of clogging up that intersection for 30 seconds so Home Depot customers can't leave?
So the reasons for the location and size of that do not block intersection box is because what we're concerned about is traffic backing up from the signal and potentially all the way to that first internal intersection. And should that happen, we don't want westbound traffic that's approaching, traffic that's approaching and from this direction, and they see that traffic is already backed up to this point. We don't want them to continue to proceed and block this area.
You know, that what,
The entrance side, this side of it, we want to make sure that traffic continues straight through. So you would not want to extend this box down to this. As far as cars yielding to pedestrians in the crosswalk, so if a pedestrian pushes the rectangular flashing beacon, that's just an indication. I mean, traffic is supposed to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk, regardless.
Yep.
But the flashing beacon just adds more visibility to the fact that there is a pedestrian in the crosswalk, and no different than at any other intersection that has this kind of system. Traffic that's entering the shopping center, they have to stop and yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk.
okay, so it's safe to say that when they stop at the crosswalk, somebody leaving Home Depot will not be able to leave.
That's correct.
That's right.
That's correct. Yeah.
It shouldn't be
Yeah,
Right, and shouldn't be.
able to leave until that, and shouldn't be able to leave until that pedestrian is safely
Right.
across the road.
why does the crosswalk? Why would this crosswalk prevent somebody from taking a left?
It doesn't, nor would it prevent somebody from going straight through, but it does prevent, but if somebody, not that somebody would want to make a right turn, really, yeah, but that would be about the only reason. And you're right, should traffic be ideally yield at this point? Sure. Will they? Some will, some won't.
And then something that concerns me is just tractor trailers coming to a screeching halt at the crosswalk. Is there a benefit to some like yield markings? Before the crosswalk, just to stop their bumper from Just to pull them off the crosswalk a little bit?
So one thing, they're certainly not gonna be coming to a screeching halt. I mean, to navigate this rather tight turn around the bend here.
Yep.
They're gonna be doing that at most 15 miles an hour. So they will have plenty of time to decelerate to a stop condition, without risking
Is it a little bit
Squeaking
safer?
the tires
Is it a little bit
intersection.
safer if we encourage them to stop slightly before the crosswalk rather than?
I mean, we can certainly, you're right. I mean, this looks like on this plan, it looks like what we've done, basically, we've retained the existing stop. Marking stop bar and crosswalk here. But you're right, what should be, the stop line should be 5 feet. Behind the crosswalk or in front of the crosswalk. So this is a conceptual design. And we haven't honestly looked that closely into where the stop line should be. That's just the existing stop line that's there today and the existing crosswalk that's there. But when we do design this, when we prepare the actual design plans, we'll make sure that stop bar is
Should be unmuted now.
There you go, you might want to ask again.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions?
I just have one
Yes.
quick question.
How does it get you to seven?
Okay.
You were representing of the fire department and the police department, correct?
Yeah.
You were deputized an hour ago?
Congratulations.
You ready? So my only question, I do know that right now, tractor trailer trucks do park in that open lot and they go to Uno's. So someone's coming in, they pull in, they park in that upper lot, maybe 2 or 3 of them, they take up, and that's generally pretty wide open. So if they came in and went past, came in that little right turn only lane. Are they able to, and then, it's hard for me, I'm, again, not a traffic engineer. Are they gonna be able to swing into that park and stay out of that roadway in order for them to come out and then leave and go either out or back to the, maybe back to the warehouse? They'll come out, take a right turn and go back to the warehouse. If they were gonna stop and to eat there, that was my only concern.
Okay,
I'm not sure I quite followed you.
So
Sorry.
somebody's coming in and they're gonna go, a truck driver,
you want to
wheeler,
eat at Uno's.
and they wanna eat at Uno's. Right now, they're parking in that front lot.
Up here?
Yes. Yeah, they're just parking in there. They park across.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Multiple spaces.
Right.
Yeah. There's plenty of room in there. No one ever seems to be, they stayed back a little bit. So now you're pushing them out and you've got that green space there. They're gonna try and swing into that lot, right, to get out of that roadway area. You follow?
So,
So today they're coming in what is a full access curb cut that we're.
Yeah, so-
yes, but I don't know which way
So
they're
the-
coming.
The
Are
truck
they
comes
coming
in, he goes around here, he comes in here, he wants to park up here.
Yeah,
So is he gonna be able to come in? Normally what they do is they come in and they kind of park right along here.
mhm.
I just don't know distance wise. They come up, then they're leaving here and they're gonna come back and go to the warehouse. So I do know that, normally there is 2 or 3 trucks here. If you've been there, you've seen, and they'll walk across and go to eat.
I mean,
I mean, there's no great way. I just don't know
Right.
without seeing what's here. It's kind of hard. And we don't want them in this area, right?
no,
So
no,
you kind of have to at least give them, let's say, we don't want them on this side. You kind of want them in this area. Is there enough room for them to make that swing?
yeah, certainly, there certainly would not be enough room for them to exit here and make a right turn. I mean, not without taking up all of the lanes of traffic. But that's no different than what happens today. either,
Right, they do it
because
today,
they do it
so,
today, right.
Yeah, that won't change that part of it. The only thing is they'll be able to get out and.
So the right in that we're making, that second right in, we're trying to make accommodate tractor trailers that come and park in either of those.
I mean, this design right now would not accommodate a
Correct.
tractor.
Because we're
trailer.
trying,
Right, so would you be looking for them, if they were gonna come and eat here?
But honestly, I'm not sure that,
Would they come in and go?
yeah,
exactly, if anything, that
Come
was
in and
gonna
go
say they
this
would
way
come
and
in
then
here.
turn around
Right,
here?
right. Because I don't think even the existing curb cut that's down in this area, I don't think that could accommodate a tractor trailer truck making the turn there either.
Yeah, yes, it can,
Can it?
yes.
I think it does because there's 50 feet of asphalt there and they're
Oh,
swinging
right.
into the.
Yeah,
Right.
they do swing in there, and the same thing with,
They're not doing
the landscape trucks.
they're not
trucks,
big.
trailers.
Right, right.
It's impossible in this scenario. And I don't think we're talking a huge number of vehicles,
No,
that they stay in the lane to the warehouse. And is there a roundabout or somewhere at the warehouse?
No,
Okay,
Well, there's pavement down there. They want to swing around and come
Yes.
back.
So they
Certainly, yeah,
there's enough room,
of course.
so they could turn around, go back on the exit road. And pull in and take a right into, I don't know how to say it.
there's no room in here.
There's no room in there.
No.
Yeah.
They
No, I
definitely
think
would
they
have.
would do what Ron, what you suggested is they'd make the right at that first.
they would come in,
Intersection.
they would come in
Here.
here, exactly, right. Pull in
And then
and
swing
then
around and
swing
get back out
around.
the same way.
And they'd have enough room to make this swing.
If they had enough room to park there and access by the other way. If there are people. I'm certainly hoping there's plenty of shoppers still in those parking. It's not easy for a tractor trailer to do that, but.
Anyone else have questions, Tim? I'd like to finish up, a little bit. Robert, I'd like to ask you a question, and it was alluded to a little bit earlier. Based on everything that we've provided to you, and the applicant has provided to you, realizing what the benefits will be to, Hartford Avenue, long term, and the benefits that I just found out recently, that this will have enhanced signalization from, Hartford Avenue over to, I believe, both developments on the other side of 495. Knowing all that information, the new roads, the new signalization, the new warehouse. Is this the best option available right now?
Well,
We've made improvements.
yeah, well, in terms of the improvements, and our focus in the peer review was really just these improvements in this area of the shopping center.
Okay.
Did not include an evaluation of the offsite, although we've seen those plans. And they are subject to DOT review and approval, so I'm absolutely certain DOT will approve and only approve a plan that's functional and meets their criteria, right? So understanding that focus is only on what you see here.
I
in this.
understand, but what little knowledge base you have on
Yeah.
DOT.
We concur with that this design is appropriate, and meets a reasonable standard for operations and safety.
Okay,
Absent a major overhaul of parking areas and everything else, this would represent the most optimal solution.
okay, and I'm in agreement with your analysis of making sure it works. And we had mentioned that maybe a month or two ago. To enhance the safety, are we planning to post speed limits here?
Weren't planning on it, no.
What is the downside to it?
Certainly through this area, the traffic can't move, at a great rate of speed because of the curvatures of the road.
Yep,
You might want to consider, speed limit signs along the rest of the perimeter road once you get past, the shopping center.
okay. That would be 50 miles an hour,
I wouldn't suggest 15, but maybe 20, 25.
okay.
I mean, keep in mind that there's nothing else in your way anymore. There are no other curb cuts. Well, there's one, the truck access into Home Depot.
The back of Home Depot.
Back Home Depot, but that's it until you get to the warehouse site, so. The only reason that you would want to limit speeds is if there are a lot of curb cuts, a lot of traffic interactions going on. That you want side street traffic to have enough gaps in traffic. You don't have that situation here, so. I certainly wouldn't say, I don't think you need a speed limit.
Okay, I'm just asking the question. You're the experts, I'm not. Again, my background is purely risk management and safety. What are both of you gentlemen, your feelings on lighted stop signs?
They work very well.
Okay, do we anticipate, can we look at lighted stop signs?
You certainly can.
Okay, I think that would brighten things up.
Yep.
And enhance the fact that we want people to, hopefully to slow down. At one point, I haven't seen it, and it could be on another presentation. I made a joke about, you asked me that I volunteered to drive down to Rentham Outlets, see if they had a sign on 495 mentioning Rentham Outlets, and they do. Have we looked at the viability of dealing with the state and putting a sign on 495 and any response from the state?
Not on 495, but what we are proposing and will be including in the 75% submission to DOT is a sign at the southbound off ramp, we're basically at the end of, near the end of the ramp and around this location here that says Crossroads Center, keep left.
Okay,
We're not sure if DOT is going to approve it, because generally speaking, DOT does not want private business signage on there.
I understand.
But because of and we're certainly going to be making the case, we have a double left turn lane coming off the ramp. And then a relatively short distance until we get to Crossroads Center. So it only makes sense to include that sign. I'm hopeful that they will see the light and agree with us.
Robert, I certainly don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you concur with the advantage of having a sign on that ramp?
Yeah, I do, but I also understand that DOT is, they're pretty stingy.
I understand.
Yeah, but I concur with Ron's statement and the approach that the applicant's taking.
And as a consultant, could that be put in writing?
Could I, in other words, maybe augment the letter that I
Yes,
put
that
together?
augments
that
a good
would-
word. I like that.
Yeah, sure, we could do that.
Just so you know, by the way, we are scheduling a meeting with DOT, hopefully within the week. That will be one of the points of discussion.
Okay,
That and the new overhead sign, the mast arm.
As long as there's recognition that they could say no to us.
I understand.
We
Yeah, I learned a lot of nipples, and one of them was you don't ask, you don't get it.
Right.
So all they can do is say no.
We got a Charles River to the right. Starboard. We'll talk to them about that.
My count level has increased. What's next on your agenda this evening? I believe you want to show us
Yeah, so we.
some ideas of what we're looking at.
We did some perspective views to give a sense of what the project one would theoretically see or not see
Okay,
from north and southbound vantage points on 495, as well as one of the ranch systems. So I'll pull those up. Here is one of them. So this, you can kind of see in the corner, this is from the northbound lane or northbound lanes looking at the site on 495. Clearly, you're looking at a lot of trees.
okay,
Right? So
This is the before, this is existing.
this is existing, and well, and this is before, and what we did is we did the next view, if I'll go to the next page. So this is the post condition. Now, the reason the building is ghosted in the background because the existing condition and the proposed condition look identical. The expectation is because of the grading, because of the dense screening of vegetation that you're gonna have along 495 in between where the product's gonna be, you're not expected to see utility. As we talked about maybe even a year ago, we are still going to do selective planting along that boundary to infill where the canopy might be lower, just to provide some additional buffering. But the expectation is that you're not going to see this facility from your standpoint. We ghosted in there to show you that, hey, we really built it. And we did a little video, which we'll show at the end, to show you how the model really functions, but this is just the model view again too. So this is just the computer rendering, mimicking everything to show you how it's been done. Again, the video will show you how everything relates to each other.
Okay.
Another one, this is the ramp system. So you can see this is the southbound exit ramp and then southbound on ramp. That's the existing view. And then again, you can see right here, kind of left center of the image, that's where the building would be positioned. Again, ghosting it because the expectation is that it's not going to be visible.
And how tall is that building?
So the building is expected to be 45 feet.
Okay.
That's to its tallest point. That's how we've modeled it. Yeah.
That's a reason.
Embedded in the model, and we'll talk about this when we show the video, but we've modeled all the topography as it exists and in its post condition. So the models are reflective of that blended topographic condition. So we're modeling this in its final condition as the grading would suggest it to be.
Okay.
And then this is just the computer modeling of it, just so you can see that we have that. And the last one that we ran, this is again, northbound side of the road, looking back towards the site. Building ghosted in there, you can kind of see it pop in. And then that's the computer model. So to show you to prove that we actually did model this, we created this is an actual model from the rendering or from the software that was used to create those perspective views. And I'll pause it as we keep going. There, it's a little choppy because we're going to Zoom, but what we're doing, we just pop it over the tree line so you can see that we've actually modeled this, and I'll pause it when it gets there. So this kind of gives you just a sense of the relationship in here, and I'm gonna go play this. Over it a little bit. So this slope in here, this is actually coming back up, and we're tying in. We've graded this and kind of designed things with the idea that we're trying to preserve and maintain as much of that wooded buffer as is possible, and we've also things are kind of depressed interior to the property. Take advantage of that topographic break where there is kind of this knoll between 495 and the property.
Yeah.
With the idea that you're screening, the majority and frankly, as far as this model suggests, the entirety of the operational piece of the building. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. The reason we put this together is because we wanted you to actually see that we did in fact build a model of everything. We used it to create those vantage points.
Okay.
How many feet between the pavement that the trucks are sitting on and the top of the berm or whatever you want to call it? What do you call it earlier? Top of the hill.
It's a berm in that particular location. There is some undulation in the grading, and
Yeah,
Austin alluded to the fact that in some of those low spots, we would infill plant and we plan to reflect them infill planting.
yeah. I like the idea of hiding it.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a positive. So I'm just,
Same here.
I'm asking the question because I like it.
When they,
So
they
please
put these in front of me, I
expand.
said, really? That's
Yeah,
all it is?
and Jeff is my biggest critic, so. So you're asking, the question is, so answer properly,
This
is,
graphic, the difference between where the trucks are sitting and the pavement level and the top of the berm,
a horizontal distance, correct?
horizontal distance.
Okay.
I mean, could you see the truck? Is the truck gonna be hidden underneath it?
The expectation, the truck is hidden under the majority of that because we are looking at about 14 to 16 feet of grade difference where that knoll vertically is higher than that pavement edge. And as Jeff pointed out, there's some undulation in there, but the expectation is that you're not seeing those trucks because the loading doors on the building, which you're also not seeing,
That's what.
are higher than the truck itself. So, but
So
horizontally,
you're not gonna see those doors either. or
Right,
is it
well,
closed?
and that was a primary focus, if the board asked us specifically to hide the operational piece of the building.
Mhm.
So the grading was strategically designed to try and accommodate that, in consideration of the topographic change between 495 and the facility. And then, as Jeff mentioned, there are some low spots, kind of where the topo has this brief dip in there, where we're going to strategically plant in there just to supplement underneath the canopy of the existing vegetation that exists there now.
So many yards between 495 and the trucks.
So I'm doing quick math right now. So your question about how far are we from the pavement to kind of that top berm?
Yeah,
65 or 70 feet approximately.
So pavement to pavement, what's pavement? to
So,
pavement?
so from right here, so from this pavement right here to kind of this top of berm. Best I can scale here, we're approximately 65, 70 feet right in that location. Go pavement to pavement. Probably over. Yeah, at least double that. We're looking, 125, maybe 150 feet, give or take. Wow. Yeah, and you can, it's fairly symmetrical from where that berm is to. You can kind of see it's almost dead middle, so.
And the partially from my perspective, unfortunate reality is most of that vegetation sits at the 495 right away, and we're not touching that as part of the project, so. You know,
it'll help during the, like, this time of year when the trees
Yeah.
don't have the leaves.
Did you model it for the winter time?
I did not do that, no. I
I
mean,
was just wondering the height difference where the foliage is.
and also at the low points too. If you run the low point.
so if you go back to, let's see. There. So this one here, this is kind of where that sag exists. You can see this line, you know, if you can see the cursor on the screen, kind of in the middle of the right. I don't know if I can, oh, there you go. See this thing right here, I'm kind of highlighting. That is right there. There's kind of a knoll. There is this high spot. It dips in here a little bit and comes down, which is why you can see theoretically in the ghosted version, you can see more of the reveal of the building, even though there is, the vegetation follows that sag as it kind of dips down. The canopy gets lower in there, so it is providing additional screening in there. But this is one of the areas that Jeff and I have evaluated where we're going to do some strategic planting more prominently faced on 495 under that lower canopy. And it's going to be of evergreen varieties, so you're not going to get any changing seasonally. That'll kind of provide additional buffering in there.
What have we learned, or have I've learned over time with these particular developments and what we're experiencing now with one project that's being constructed in town, is that outside of traffic and noise, the people of Bellingham are very sensitive to the aesthetic look of the building. And I think we need to be extra sensitive to that, given the sheer size of this building. It's gonna be the largest building in Bellingham. That we are hiding it. I don't want to see the building personally. I know a lot of people in town don't want it there. So I appreciate the fact that the operational part of it, at least in places, are being screened, but it really can't be seen. So, you know what I mean? So we need to see, we've asked in the past about what this building is gonna look like. I know there's been some hesitancy to provide us.
We are in the process of preparing two-dimensional illustrations to give you a sense of.
We'll provide elevations of what the building will look like. We have not designed the building. We wanted, or the roadway project, a lot of things are just making us hesitant to get out over our skis with that, but we will design some elevations of a typical building in here. I think what our takeaway from this exercise was, no matter what it looks like, it's hard to find. We had to prepare these are not what you'll see. These images are the building ghosted in to prove that we put it in the model for you. The next slide that Austin has is more or less what you will see, which is to say a lot of trees. But we will provide some elevations of the building facade, but But again, it's got the advantage, unlike maybe some of the other projects in town, of being in a location that's gonna be really, really hard to find. You will not know it's back here.
And I hope that's true, because the model shows trees that have leaves all the way to the ground, and this is in high
Go
summer.
back to the existing
So
condition.
if
Go
we,
back one more, Austin.
if we.
That's what's there today.
Right, so if we can take a look at sort of the worst case scenario, what's it gonna look like at some time, like around that time? And really, and I can't emphasize this enough, really screen the building to the very best of your ability. You look at the Amazon, we did the Amazon building, we had a condition where there was plantings done, that was to do it again, it wasn't enough, right? So we can see it, we can see the truck, particularly now. And I know that many people in town are very sensitive to the look of these warehouse buildings. And we, I think, as a board, need to be sensitive to the aesthetic look. Because we're lucky in that we don't have residential neighbors. A lot of our warehouses, our zoning is crazy, and we have industrial uses, we have residential uses, and that's not good. But in this case, at least, you know, this is contained, but I can't emphasize it enough. I need to be assured that we're not seeing this. We're not seeing the building, we're not seeing the operational. Maybe we see pieces of it, but I really don't want to drive by 4 years from now and say, oh, there's 16 trucks at the bays, and you know, like, well, you know what I mean? So kind of like Amazon. So I can't emphasize that enough, that we have a very good understanding of what this is gonna look like from all angles. And we have a very good understanding of what this building is gonna look like. It can't look like we run afoul of this in the past, as well as the look of these buildings can sometimes be very generic, and we need to make this work for the town.
If I may, then, two questions, I guess. From all angles, the three locations we've taken these perspective views from, are you suggesting that we should be looking at them from North Main Street or something like that, where
Yeah,
hundreds
that
and
would be
hundreds of
helpful.
feet from?
Yeah, if we can see the building from Home Depot, or we can see the building from 126. Are we gonna, if the answer is no, great, but if we can see a model of that after the trees are gone, show me the clearing, right? Because there's gonna be a significant amount of clearing, a lot of that background tree line that we see in this, you know, that shows depth of trees that might not be there anymore after we clear out.
In this view here, so I think, I mean, what we tried to accomplish, if you look, this is probably better. This shows you what we're expecting to remain, so as we
That's the
kind of
view
think
you're
it's
running
rendering.
through.
Yeah.
Does this continue?
For a
just
couple
look at-
seconds,
yeah.
it's get essentially stops here, and the reason we stopped it here was just so you could see the relationship of the two things together, but also to demonstrate. Where you can see kind of where the expected clearing limits are.
This is 75 to 125 feet of trees. There's
Trees
are gonna
cover the
thousands
top
of
of the
feet.
building.
trees between this site and North Main Street.
Are we gonna see the top of the building?
No.
I don't expect that you will.
And if you can ensure somehow, and I don't know how you get there, that in the fall, the trees go up, the leaves fall.
Well, that was,
We're gonna see a row of trees that you plant that completely covers the visual impact of this building.
we think, that was gonna be my next question. If we were to get a photograph from these very same vantage points taken November, what day is it? November 20th. And update the model to show that condition.
That would be
Would that-
helpful. Yeah, for sure.
Help or sufficient, or what
Helpful. I mean, I can't. To me personally, the visual impact is going to be something that is going to affect the town long term. The traffic is something we can only model and manage. You know, with any sort of degree of certainty for the next 5 or 10 years or whatever. But the visual impact is what will live on in this town forever. For as long as there's a facility there, so I really just wanna make sure we get it right. I just really need to know that we got it right. We're hiding this. We are hiding this from people. You drive by, you don't even really know is there. That would be my goal.
Just point, perhaps we can do that photo. I mean,
Yeah, yep. We can update these three perspective views using current present day photography, which would have most of that to the extent there are deciduous trees that make up this buffer.
If you can show me whatever plantings you're gonna put in.
Yep.
What the row of.
Those are depicted in the plan view of what we provided, but, and they're, believe it or not, in the. If you zoom in on the views, you can see them in 2 or 3 spots at the very back of what's left of the tree buffer. They're there.
Well, to your perspective, they can do this delicately with trees instead of the massive fence that you see in every town that blocks a lot of this for sound, which actually tells you there's the building right behind it. You know, we can do it more
So the
basically.
sound barrier.
Exactly.
And what Amazon did get right, or Cam Valley got right, was they did strategic plantings off of Maple Street. Where they had to actually clear they cleared a, I don't know how big it was, but it was a path through a wooded area, and they put back, they spaced pine trees, deciduous trees strategically, like all off center, and it looks like it was always there. And it was really good screening for the area that they cleared out. So just, if you can be creative and clever and assure me, and assure the board, that we are not going to see this facility at all, then that would be very helpful.
I'd like to see you be a little bit creative too, and I don't know, obviously, sometimes money's a factor, but I think it would be like maybe important to look at maybe doing, if you can, and maybe you can't, solar. Look at that and maybe look at like where you said you might have many different uses here. If you have employees like at the back end of this, maybe look at an area for the employees outside, how that may be. Are they gonna simply not have a place, or will they have a place? Is there gonna be, an eating area outside for them? So I'm just thinking of that, just maybe outside of the box, thinking a little bit, because it may not just be warehouse use, correct?
No,
We
I
don't
think
know.
these are flex industrial or they're attracting a variety of different end users. and
Maybe
They're all
think,
zoning compliant users,
right,
but I don't know who they are, and I think something like an outdoor employee area would
Right.
be something that's entirely driven by the tenant at some point.
maybe some, obviously, we probably need some EV charging stations and fill employees, so just, some of those things maybe to hit.
And to,
To just where those would be, like EV charging
again,
stations.
those would be, we'd be taking input from a prospective end user here for
Right.
something like that.
Right,
What I like,
We're trying to get to a point where, we've talked about it, it's in the decision. You wouldn't have to come back here again to talk about it later if it was, we're looking to kick all the cans, so it doesn't have to be a condition that 10 years from now, we're talking about it again, type of thing. But I'm speaking for one person, but.
Yeah.
your comments, when you see,
excuse me, one more thing, Bill, and I'm sorry, and then I'm done, but I know that at one point we were talking about the parking was gonna be in different areas and with employees having to cross.
correct.
So I think that's also something that might have to be the rendering, how that will.
What I'd like to ask for now is I think, we're feeling more comfortable with the parking. I don't think that's, I think that's a good statement. I'd like to start the process of, getting plans in front of us so we can begin the peer review of the building.
What's the peer review of the building? I'm asking because I don't understand, not because I'm questioning you.
What's a peer review?
So we have diagrams we can look at of what we're gonna be
Yeah,
doing.
I don't know if it would necessarily have to be peer reviewed.
Okay.
I think that, we can, I've never seen them be able to be peer reviewed, but I
Okay.
think, you know, we could have dialogue of what we, you know, what looks good,
We
what
could
could be added, what could be taken, away,
Provide
but
some
I think that would be helpful.
typical elevations of what the
Yes.
building could or would look like. You're talking about like something I might submit for a building permit that would go to the
Yes.
building department
Yes,
as part of this process?
what do you think?
I think just elevation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Architectural,
Mhm.
no
Like a-
building permit.
Mhm.
A two-dimensional visual representation of the architectural appearance of the building.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah,
You know, the streets we can flip over and look at,
sure. And
Right.
we
with
are
the parking areas.
we're in
We
the
have site,
process of
you have
preparing.
site, you have site plans.
Okay, but it doesn't show what the.
No,
what the
we
building's
are,
gonna look like.
we are in the process of preparing those, and the next time we meet, presumably, we'll have something that we can share.
Okay. What's a good time for the next meeting?
When are the next meeting?
We have, tentatively December 14th, is that correct?
I think it's the.
I don't think they're on the agenda.
Let me see, it's the 11th or we have the 25th
Maybe it's probably.
of January,
January.
Oh, all right, no, I was.
yeah. You know, would the 11th work?
January 11th?
Yeah.
I think we could be done with the balance of the VSC.
Mhm.
Certainly have an elevation. I'm not quite sure I'm following what else you want out of the perspective views.
You just, as you said, a design of what the building's gonna look like.
We could provide building elevations, but they will just be two-dimensional. They won't have any vegetation.
That's
They're
fine.
not- Yeah, okay. And we will update these three perspective views using current day photography to show what it would look like in a theoretical winter condition.
Okay,
Yes, some figures and some height on this area too.
Yeah, so those rendering or the architectural elevations will have,
Yeah.
the heights and stuff.
Roger, is there anything you think we need?
Just to be clear, that 45-foot tall building is what you're looking at in that image.
Right.
Anything else you think we're gonna need to move forward?
I think the building elevations is really kind of the item to look at. Yeah, this model is pretty helpful. I have
Yeah, it
to
is.
say. I,
That
Look
increased
at
my
the-
comfort level.
yeah, I looked at the PDFs and I was kind of confused with just the ghosty.
So was I, that's why.
Yeah, so
I
this,
suggested doing this.
yeah, thank you for, because
Thank you.
I was a little concerned when I saw what was submitted.
I think we all, we saw the ghost.
Yeah.
We knew this was gonna provide context to the ghosting with Levy.
Yeah, so
And
this,
this is realistic, correct?
So yeah, it's based, so this is all based on our design file, civil 3D and everything else. It's
Okay.
to scale, and like I said before, the proposed grading is in here, so all the earthwork that's required is meshed in with the existing, so they are related to each other. in the
Okay.
Final condition, yeah.
So that kind of brings up another point, for something later, but construction. Hours of construction, trucks coming through this intersections and all that stuff. We probably need to go through that with a little bit more detail than normal. Because it is being accessed by the main thoroughfare there, and the main drag and the main road, for the core, et cetera. So,
Be assured that construction traffic will be less than the final occupancy construction, traffic. level.
yeah, but it's different flavor though, right?
Well, both trucks.
Yeah, but
And
let's
anything
talk
smaller
about it.
trucks.
Let's
Well,
talk
yeah,
about
we'll probably
what
have
you're
some,
thinking.
typical construction management concerns.
Is this gonna be a tilt up?
I don't know yet,
No idea.
likely,
Likely, okay.
maybe cast in place
So
till,
there'll be, we'll have to work around the hours on that.
Of course.
Mhm, mhm,
They
Was
may
that-
wanna go 24 on the 4 days, you know,
mhm,
when you pour the concrete. You may wanna go all night,
mhm.
all day, if you're doing big huge sections of these walls. I know your contractor will ask for that, for sure.
and how does that translate to this process? I'm not-
Well, just the hours of operation
Okay,
during construction.
Right.
So we don't limit you to one thing, you're gonna need flexibility on
Oh, I
it, that's
agree.
what I'm saying.
yeah,
You know, you may say certain hours, long term.
Right.
But when you're building the walls, we can be flexible.
Mhm.
Because, a lot of concrete
Yeah,
companies
you're gonna have to.
want
hire
to
a
do
whole
one
concrete
per
company for that.
floor. And, do everything as quickly as possible. We
Understood.
just experienced that a month ago, correct?
And we have the last one, they went right around the clock.
Yeah.
They own the concrete company for 3 days, actually. They shut it down all of the other businesses. The only way you can pour that, because you have to have a continuous pour.
Right.
Right. I
The
mean,
one at Mechanic Street and one.
exactly.
Any other questions
Sorry to
from the
bring that
board?
up.
I would say too, just if you're gonna update the rendering with some of the, foliage. Or the loss of canopy for the seasons, just be mindful if there, it sounds like the board really wants the building hidden, so if there's some. Trees that you can add in certain places, maybe incorporate if you can.
Yeah, we made reference to that.
Sure, yeah.
We have to accommodate what we're trying to do it in response to the topography, and we'll take a look at what. If we need to augment that as a byproduct of deciduous trees.
Yeah, I didn't even know there was that berm there. Yeah.
It's not,
Is the board open to a camouflage architectural thing?
excuse me?
Is the board open to a camouflage architectural thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was actually.
I'm
thinking-
joking, I wouldn't want to paint it like military camo or
I know, but we have looked at colors of building.
I think like earth tones or something perhaps, yeah.
We've done that before.
I was actually thinking maybe if you get your tractor trailers to be like chia pet themed, so they grow vegetation, you just line them
You
up.
might be into a different market, I think it's on Shark Tank or something tomorrow night.
Okay.
Hold on, now, and then right now, we're all partners, so.
Oh, okay, yeah, there you go.
And then I think someone mentioned, I believe you said it isn't visible. But from, Hartford Avenue, looking down.
We're quite a ways away from Hartford Avenue, yeah.
I don't think renderings from Hartford.
No, but that's someone asked.
Did,
I think Brian.
I just want to be assured that from wherever the public is they don't, we have a handle on what it looks like.
yeah, I'm in complete agreement with everything you said. I will say, from my perspective, the warehouse abutting 495, I'm really not as concerned with camouflaging the building from 495 since it is a major interstate.
Mhm.
But, and I understand if people have a different opinion, but I can see where we run into the issue, like the warehouses on Maple Street where it's considered a scenic road, there's residential properties right there. The Mechanic Street and Maple Street intersection, very visible area. It is industrial zone, but it's extremely visible and it's not an interstate like 495. So I just wanted to state that for the record. That's my opinion on the matter.
My concern is there's a stretch of 24 where they weren't thinking about that, and you just see bay after bay after bay of a massive warehouse, and it's really wouldn't want you to, oh, let's go check out whatever town that is and see them live there, or that looks like, because you drive by warehouse.
Back on the list.
There's a stretch of 146 from the Rhode Island line to Worcester that's
Yeah.
like that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
To Rob's point, I think towns are constructing zoning very often in that way, because you want to put these kinds of uses up against the highway.
Right.
You get the benefit of the tax base. In this case, you get the benefit of the 146 improvements. But it's not something that the folks who live in town and are in the town center, or it's just something you see from the highway. To your point, maybe it
nonetheless, I don't want to see it.
understood.
Most of the town of Bellingham, I can assure you, does not want to see this.
The rendering, the perspective views we provided for you tonight, demonstrate that. We'll take it one step further and remove some leaves for you and prove that you still can see it.
And give us a plan about where you're gonna put trees and how it's all gonna work, and assure me.
We'll take a look with the photos Jeff mentioned, and if there are areas where that buffer needs to be supplemented, then that'll be incorporated for the landscape plan.
That might be what's on the landscaping plan, if this is residential development. that type of thing would be important. I think it's actually important in this situation where, you know. Yeah. I guess I'd like to see that landscape plan.
There is a landscape plan in the
It's
package
in
that
the
was
package.
submitted a year ago to the town.
It's-
We'll update it.
It's got
to
the,
reflect some of these.
please,
Sure.
please, because that, I'm in complete agreement that I really don't want to see this from 495. But 495, there's a couple spots you can see. Right now, I'd like to limit those here. Especially if it's a couple evergreen trees or something like that. I'm on the same
They
page.
did it in my backyard. I can't see the golf course anymore. And I'm sad because of it though. Because it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Now I can't see nothing.
They don't look good, you.
Yeah, well, that could be too.
It's the C700 series, that's the landscape plan, and these ones, I don't know if they've been updated, these might be outdated. These are from October of last year.
No, I think
We submitted early August.
Early August. But I think what it's not reflective of is any additional plantings that may come out of this task right
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, if there's a missing spot on going down the road here, where it dips down like you were talking about, we want to see that and what you're doing.
Yeah,
That's where those additional trees recommend going.
That's what Jeff and I
Exactly.
talked about.
Yeah.
And right now, as this suggests, because that topography dips, the vegetation goes with it.
Yeah.
It doesn't require that now, but that's not to say that if we, we're gonna take these photos in the coming days. We'll do this model inside those photos. And we'll see if that presents any aha moments for us in terms of visibility, and then we'll buffer that.
Yeah, and the measurements that, that we're talking about here would be important.
Same thing, it'll be the same kind of deal where the model is, to scale with everything and it fits inside that photo.
And then you would show Hartford Avenue, you couldn't see it from that angle.
Hartford Avenue, I don't know, I mean, you tell me if you
North
disagree.
Main
I don't know if
Street,
there's
the
value in
same
that,
thing.
but
Just, I don't
so far away, and the buffer is so substantial. I don't expect any visibility from Hartford Avenue or North Main Street.
love to walk through it with you then.
But bring up Google Earth.
I mean,
It doesn't show where you're taking the trees down and stuff. though.
Ask a question you mentioned earlier. You were in front of conservation. And, almost a year ago, we spoke about you had some satellite parking
yes.
that we wanted to put in reserve potentially.
So I
Can you bring us up to speed on that?
sure can, yeah, let me grab those plans.
I know it's getting,
Nope, you got it.
I'm running long here. But I want to make sure we do not skip over that. I thought that maybe they were going to maybe request a waiver or,
We are fully entitling the satellite parking through the Conservation Commission process. It'll be part of the order of conditions that we
thank you.
received. But there was a request to consider perhaps a condition from the planning board to demonstrate need for the parking.
Correct.
We built them up, but that would only exist in the planning board decision. The Concom doesn't really have that
All right,
flexibility. They're either gonna, they have to mitigate, we have to mitigate for it under the built condition. And
Yep.
we're gonna go do that through the planning board, through the Concom process.
So what you are referring to is this parking right here. This is the parking that's kind of further
Correct.
from, yeah, so,
and there was one over to the right-hand side too.
yeah, so the idea.
Okay, that's even better to
Yeah, you're saying that. So what we have done, just as a very quick and brief refresher, as part of our conversations with this board as well as the Conservation Commission and your therapy team, substantially consolidated this parking by introducing additional compact spaces, reducing the footprint, getting creative with geometry, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So we feel that this kind of threads the needle between, it meets our operational expectations and needs of the facility. It did increase the amount of relief that we have to ask, and that we are requesting from the town for that, but
For reduced parking?
reduced parking number of compact spaces, everything like that.
Okay.
So, but we feel that this still meets the needs of the project while satisfying the asks, if you will, from the town. I think we all reached a consensus there. So the idea is that we are designing and presumptively speaking, approving all of the parking here with the idea that this parking, particularly as it's kind of furthest away from the project itself, would be kind of land banked, if you will, and constructed if needed, but approved so that if it were determined to be required, we wouldn't have to come back and then re-entitle it. It would just be there and we can enable that parking by way of the existing approval.
Okay, but the advantage of doing this, not only is land banking, we're reducing impervious surface, which I think everyone wants to do.
Yeah, correct. With like, and not to be repetitive, but the idea that we would be approving it as part of this process, so we didn't have to come back and do that later.
I understand.
Yeah.
Is there any other spot you want to land bank?
You'll be building it as needed.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't
Say needed,
think so. I think the rest of the parking, kind of given its proximity to the building and then the ratios it would provide, I think would be appropriate to have with the facility coming online immediately.
Even the portion, where, the access road goes between,
Right here.
yes, up there.
Yeah, I think we would still want those to be online immediately.
Okay,
The
All right.
full build condition here falls below what the town requires for this use. But we're seeking relief from the town.
I understand.
Yeah. But what the market is telling us in terms of a ratio we need to provide for this building, we're likely gonna need to build all of this, but we recognize that the town has had some varying experiences with that.
Yep.
So we're comfortable leaving out or a condition that deals with that most remote.
And that's the land bank.
Yeah.
And I like the idea. Actually, I think we're pushing it at one point.
I like that approach.
While you have that up there, Austin, for some perspective, where the label Interstate 495 is and the building, that's the area between where all those trucks were shown in the rendering and the video we looked at. That's the highway proximity to the building. All way down underneath the zoning table is North Main Street. And the swamp wetland exists between North Main Street.
All of this is very
building
densely
this-
wooded.
A quarter mile of woods there that exists between North Main Street. There's quite a bit of woods between Hartford Avenue and the building here, if you look down the corner. So
As this area.
we asked about walking through some of these other perspective views. This puts the building in a little bit of context in terms of it's proximate to 495, really only 495, which is why we focus the perspective views from those locations.
I understand. That's a big spot for me.
Yeah.
Even post clearing, like for I mean, for context, basically the limit of this driveway, the perimeter driveway is effectively the limit of clearing too. And the reason being is between the building and the project out to North Main Street. Oversimplifying it, but it's essentially all wetlands and densely mature vegetation. So we're not in there, and we had to strategically design that perimeter access road in collaboration with the Conservation Commission to limit its disturbance lines. So, and further, there's what we're contemplating with the Conservation Commission is an expansion, if you will, of the conservation restricted area that is associated with the Crossroads Center, and a portion of this of the property will be in a conservation restriction too. So,
Can you go through with that landscape, the heights through here? I mean, concerning, if it's all dipping down and we can walk it through the
No, actually-
landscape. Not for tonight, but just, that's what the concern is that when you're on this road driving by, you don't see it.
So the building
not for
sits in
tonight.
the old Barney sandy gravel pit.
Is down.
It's actually lower
That's
than
what
the-
we'd like to
Just
just
the
double.
wetland, it's one of the things we're contending with as far as replication with Concom.
Yeah, so that's what we'd like to go
Yeah.
through, I think, and
That's a good point, Phil,
because I,
because if that's set higher than everything else. you
Yeah.
don't wanna
Yes.
see-
it's just, let's
Get-
cover it.
We can run a section through there, easy enough.
yeah. It's
Same with the
not-
Hartford, just let's talk through that too.
I mean, for context, this wetland system is what everybody calls the kind of the cedar swamp. So that's what it's kind of been coined as over the 15 years I've been working on the property. And where our site is, this is
pretty significantly higher. This wetland is up around elevation 234 at the edge, yeah.
Yeah, and for context, like the parking lot grades down in here, we're gonna be
228, I think.
220, yeah, 228 and getting lower. So that, yeah.
Yeah, let's not do that when we're
Yeah,
going into the plan. It's just that, you know,
A section through there, I guess, or something.
Just-
like
just-
that. I'm not
yeah,
sure what else
just
to-
what
how else
height
to
the
prove that.
building versus the, just, again, confidence that we're not gonna see it. That's what we're trying to do.
One last question before I call for motion. We move it to the January 11th meeting. I think we have a good collaborative approach. We've allowed us to reach out and utilize our own traffic engineer for the parking. We appreciate that. Conversely, you don't know right now what this is going to be. Correct?
I know it'll be a zoning
The end user
compliant
is going to be.
use and it'll fit within the size of the building that.
I understand that, which I appreciate that. Can you just let us know what you would need potentially for flexibility based on what type of tenant it is?
Not sure.
I thought at some point it could be,
Yeah, we
manufacturing or
light manufacturing, we talked, yeah, we've described the types of potential uses here.
Yep. And how does that impact what the building would look like?
It has fewer doors.
Okay. And just outline that. So we know what, what would happen,
So what we're,
what the options are. Because right now, I think an advantage would be if it was, manufacturing. You would have less stores, potentially less trucks. Which maybe some people may view as being advantageous. So just tell us, how this building, as you build it, can be flexible for the end user.
Rephrase that. If the use change, if the end user changes, looking at conditions, what type of conditions would you want to change other than the main zoning warehouse? If it was a warehouse industrial, there it is, here's the size of the building. That's what we'd be looking at. Is there something that you would, if you had a different type of user that you would need us to evaluate and look and put in the conditions or something like that?
I
from
think
an adaptation
we would-
point of view?
yeah, we would only look to entertain users here that would be compliant with zoning, would fit within the zoning envelope, the building envelope, or permitting would fall under the trap. We.
Okay, I'm for diverse, usage of buildings.
You've been
If you brought it in-
interested in that,
If you
yeah.
happen to bring a manufacturer,
what we're
fine,
trying to
and it's
entitle
happy,
here
is things
is
like that.
Sort
are
of a
good.
reasonable worst case.
Yeah.
The traffic is surely
Less.
the high end of the potential for traffic generation coming from a facility like that. We took a conservative approach to that. The number of doors is, the maximum number of doors you can punch holes in this thing. In theory, there could be fewer, there could be office components at corners and things like that. It's,
But we need to build that flexibility into our decision.
or not restricted, I guess would be.
That's fine.
Yeah, again, it ultimately needs to be zoning compliant. To the extent it's not zoning compliant, I'm back in front of you.
Fine.
But I think the footprint of the building,
Yeah, things
traffic-
like, for example, I think there's 36 truck. The bottom side of that, there were spots for 30, 35, 36 trucks for just parking of trucks. If that changed to cars, is that gonna change the diameter of space that you would need? Just things like that, just we'd like you to consider.
I suppose we can. I think what we tried to here, as Jeff acknowledged, is we tried to design, I guess, the largest footprint, if you will, that would.
and permit,
And
and study the
biggest permit.
impacts for.
yeah, so
Okay.
And then,
theoretically, anything that may, once the end user or users, as the case may be, are more defined, they're going to fit in this envelope, and the expectation is that the envelope doesn't change. The building may have, like Jeff said, less loading doors on.
Correct.
Or something. But I don't know that we'll have clarity on that until we get kind of through the entitlement process and we have a better definition.
Okay, and we can build that into,
I guess that's what and back in August, we had talked about beginning to draft a decision and at the end of that meeting, you were, as I recall, you were, willing to entertain that and to start to get something.
once we dealt with the traffic issue. And I think we're getting. And I want to get
So
there.
we're not at a point now where we could begin to draft.
I would
Decision,
think,
perhaps entertain a decision in January.
I think we're probably looking on January, February, to potentially best.
Would it be appropriate, because from my vantage point anyway, we've had a very productive discussion. I think the focus is becoming substantially narrowed, the visibility. We're feeling pretty good about, we're gonna do that extra analysis that we just discussed. The driveway, I think, really came into focus now, and there's some minor refining that we're still gonna do based on the discussion we had tonight. Given kind of the length we've been reviewing this, and some of the things we're starting to contemplate, would it be appropriate from the board's perspective to start thinking about some of the conditions of a presumptive approval? Maybe establish a framework for that. If there are things you think are appropriate to be included, start running it by your team so that skeleton, if you will, can start to be built and we can fill it in.
I think that's fair. And a lot of those are somewhat generic.
Yeah,
We-
well,
we
of
can-
course.
We can work with Jim. We can work with you two and the board. We'll look at things, so we're not waiting till the last minute.
Yeah, I think that's, we love and we think we're at a point now where we have, to Austin's point, a couple of things to put a finer point on. But we're at a point where we could begin to prepare the framework of that decision, I would think.
I think we can start to look at conditions.
Yeah.
Fairly soon.
We're talking about it, and I'm speaking, kind of from my perspective again, but I think, we're coming back.
Unless someone says I'm wrong,
Do we need a final plan set?
We're working on that now, and so my expectation, kind of looking towards the end here, which I think it's an appropriate thing to start looking at. We had talked about briefly earlier in this conversation about having our next meeting on January 11th, so the month and a half from now, say, right? For our
Yep.
numbers. We are at a point now with the Conservation Commission where I feel like I can kind of really finalize things because the mitigation was influential to a number of things that comes together. That allows me to address the last two items in BSC letter because they were being influenced by what came out of the Conservation Commission discussion. What we talked about tonight for me really feels like it coalesced a lot of things. What I would love to do is come to this meeting having addressed those, provide some validation to things we talked about tonight with the screening and the vantage points. And start discussing or having the framework for that decision, some of the conditions that this board is contemplating be available so that we can discuss those in a bit more of a detailed manner on the 11th, if that's where we ultimately continue to.
I know the 11th, if not the 11th, the meeting afterwards. I want to see what you present on the 11th, then start to draft frameworks about some conditions.
I think what they're gonna do though, which I probably 100% agree if I was a builder. This will be the concept you're gonna go with. The change will be to fit out in the interior as your clients change. But this gives you more versatility with the trucks, with all the loading docks. Go back to that if needed. When your clients move or don't move, just change the interior, the
Yeah,
fit out.
whether this is the day one build,
Correct,
to the
exactly.
extent, it's certainly what we wanna entitle and understand
Yeah.
the impacts associated with.
Exactly.
We may not build this many doors on day one if we have a tenant that wants to do
Right.
something slightly different in the building, sure, but it would be a zoning compliant use, it would fit within the framework of this building. It would meet the parking requirements, all of those things would, just like a tenant changes it.
But this
Dog
would be
River
the
Center.
biggest impact for traffic, for everything else, this design right
This
here.
project
From here,
is-
it would
It's the
downsize
most impactful from
if the fit out changes for the client.
And then that's great.
How does sound? If it was, if it was another, depending upon the use, we could require a sound study or something like that.
Well, the sound's gonna be going towards 495, and I think 495 is gonna create more sound than this is. They'll be complaining about the sound. That's what I think.
Yeah,
From a
Yeah.
sound perspective, I'm not going to make a remark like that, because I don't know, but I would agree that sound study would be really important. The only thing is with this, the residential lots and developments nearby are pretty far. So it would be more, any noise would probably impact 495 or Home Depot, so which is a commercial center, so that would be. I would be in favor of not requiring one, just because of the location of this site.
Would the tenant possibilities change that? I mean, a warehouse, that's one thing, but if it was some sort of industrial that would make a lot of noise or something like that, what would
That would need to comply with your zoning bylaw, which would restrict noise and noxious uses and things like that. The language exists in your
Yeah,
bylaw
but we
today, and any project would be evaluated.
we
through that.
typically do studies, sound studies and things like that, and have sound, peer review on sound studies, and maybe it's not something to think about. Maybe it's not up front, but maybe it's in a condition or
Once a
something.
user is identified.
Is a condition of something like that.
Not the noise, first, I don't know what the noise is, given the proximity to 495 is gonna be one of the primary issues, but I appreciate the point. That's why I was thinking, in terms of conditions, that the board is starting to think about certain things that may be appropriate to weave into a presumptive approval. I would love to have some of that conversation further on our next meeting at the 11th, as that kind of advances, that gives us an opportunity to kind of work through the end of this bit more efficiently.
Then I would suggest then, because it seems like we're putting the apple, or whatever the phrase is, but.
Cart before the horse?
Cart before the horse, thank you. Give us a final plan set so we can look at it and we can get down to the nitty gritty. Let us see the plantings for the screenage, everything, put it in paper, and we can look at it and we can, and then come back to you and say, here's what we're thinking, conditions.
So we're gonna go fast through that.
Okay, can I throw an idea? And I apologize to the board members. Thursday night, last Thursday night in December is what month? I'm sorry?
A couple days after Christmas,
Yes,
have a one item agenda?
yes.
I don't know that, I'm not gonna be around the week.
Okay,
Personally, I know
I'm
somebody else,
okay.
I won't be
I'm
around.
not even sure why we're having this one. The one item agenda to talk about this.
Because we've had some meetings that have gone on to 12 o'clock at night.
I think this was helpful.
It was
It
very helpful.
But I don't want to make it a practice. that-
I'm not making it.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? What is the harm if Jim starts to just gather this? Because
That's
this is a huge, we've been at this for almost a year,
Over a
over a year. And I just think that I would rather him just start to get his thoughts down and say, oh, wait, I forgot this, let's include this. To then just come to January and say, okay, now let's start. I just think he can start putting some of this together because it's gonna be a lengthy decision.
I agree.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with Jim earlier this
Right.
afternoon, but he was looking for information from,
Right, I think that could still be included at your January
yeah.
11th meeting to include what you might want further, Brian, or you
Yeah.
might want further, Phil, but at
Voting
least
on
we
it.
might
I
have
think-
like some stuff right there starting.
Um,
But
I
it's,
get what you're saying. I think what we can do on the 14th is have items and not specifically final language that could be contained within conditions, topics that we can talk about. It may not be a final draft form.
We say 14th of which month?
I'm sorry.
The 11th.
the 11th.
The 11th.
That's January.
But I do know that Jim is looking for information from you guys.
Right.
In terms of conditions. And that was something that he wanted.
I will reach out to him. I'm not aware of that. I spoke to him last
We
week.
can do that.
I think we didn't want to be so presumptuous that we should just start. I think that's what we're having this conversation now.
I
but
understand.
If there's a general consensus that establishing, starting to build a framework for it, and Jim has requests for information or is gonna need some stuff for us. With the board's consent, we're happy to reach out with your team and kind of start having that discussion.
That's fine.
But sooner rather than later, get us a final plan.
Absolutely, and part of this conversation tonight was very, very helpful to me, because I now know that, hey, we're essentially there, and I know the things that I need to refine. And now that I can refine, I can finish everything. else.
We're getting close.
Oh, yeah, I feel that way.
I feel that way.
Did you concur?
Oh, yeah, no, I
Sure.
think,
I don't wanna prejudge this. I do share, I still think it's gonna. Sending trucks through a parking lot is a kind of a. It just makes me feel uncomfortable, I have to be honest with that. And it really does, what we're gonna see and how we're gonna see it and what plans are in place to make sure we don't see it. So, I appreciate the model, that does help.
I think we made progress.
Yeah, we're talking, I do have, I think you heard a lot of my concerns tonight already. So let's see, let's progress. So I'm not gonna be judging either. I'm hoping, it comes down to, I want this to be a positive for Bellingham. And that's the big thing. And Harvard Avenue is something that certainly needs help. So, that's part of what this brings, then that's part of the future decision making.
The partnership.
It is
A partnership, and that's what it comes down to. I am concerned about the trucks and the cars going together. Let's progress. I would like to see some drawings, like, as you said, getting those drawings finalized, getting that chimneys, getting,
So would you like to see something similar to what Maple Street did, where they had that up where you could see it? Is that what you're envisioning? Is that where we had them post that out there, what it's gonna look like? Is that what you would like them to do?
I
Something
think, well,
like,
I think we're,
I'm just asking,
I
like
know
what
it's-
to
well, I know
help
it's
them a
gonna be,
little
the
bit more?
landscape
Is
plans,
that what you?
landscape plan's gonna be important.
Okay,
That's gonna, like,
yeah.
That isn't set, it's gonna be.
It's
gonna be
based on what
updated, it's
happens
gonna
in
have
visual
drawings.
basic.
Yours was real light, I think that helped,
Yeah,
like real, like it was
Like
visually,
yeah.
well, you see it up there now, what it's gonna look like the end result, and I think that was helpful, like for the board to see.
yeah, and I think that rendering that was done for Maple Street and McCann, I don't know if it would necessarily apply to this one, because this rendering kind of shows that.
Mhm,
That one was shown like right at the intersection, because it was right up to the road,
mhm.
is, yeah, that's.
But.
But-
We did apply.
That's what I'm saying, this does the same thing, it's just more interactive and such, but I definitely want to see the elevations of the building as a whole.
and if there's a spot for a quick berm that keeps things from
Yeah.
seeing, and some pine trees and
Berm,
things
yeah.
like
That's
that.
what we're gonna look at, that's the. board
That's,
yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
for that.
Mhm.
Just like to, maybe next meeting we have a conversation about just pedestrian safety
Mhm.
in the actual parking lots, specifically from I think, the satellite parking lots. I think anywhere where a truck can cross a crosswalk, I think we would benefit from the flashing beacons. I think that satellite parking lot, if it is used closest to Home Depot, I think it would benefit from the flashing beacon crosswalk. If, there's employees crossing in the dark before the sun comes up or at the end of the day, something like that, I think it would be helpful. So if we could have a conversation just about safety within these.
Especially around hours of operation go to 24.
yeah,
One other item as well, which kind of falls into that whole special conditions category. And I know we talked about it, about the traffic monitoring, maybe just. If you could prepare maybe some verbiage about. Because that's probably gonna be a condition of approval, so. What you would expect. For the monitoring, and maybe we can get,
Ron's included that in the letter that he submitted on,
But we'll update that with.
is that the one that came in today?
no,
No.
November 7th.
We'll update that
Mhm.
language based on Bob Mishaw's recommendation about the video monitoring.
no,
Okay.
Dick Simpson partner.
All right, my apologies, I think I missed that, but anyway, so that's good then.
Yeah, so yeah. Entertain a motion to move this to, Thursday night, January 11th.
Second.
Any further discussion?
So. Motion to,
No, all in favor?
aye.
Motion, yes.
Aye.
Dennis, I.
Bill, aye.
Nick, I.
Motion passes unanimously. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
You wanna approve the minutes?
No, we don't have those.
No, never.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you next
Good
year.
holiday.
Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you very much.
Feel free to jack it.